Hey, this is Michael Kramer.
This is Sarah Nofke.
Hey guys, this is Ernie Howard.
Hey, this is Scott Moon, and you're listening to 30 Minute
Author Interviews with Preston Lay.
Woohoo!
Hey everybody, welcome to this week's episode of 30 Minute Author Interviews. We do have a great giveaway with this episode, but before I tell you about the giveaway, let me tell you about our sponsor, The Galactic Satori Chronicles by Nick Breaker and Paul E. Hicks. The Galactic Satori Chronicles. A thirst for revenge sends one man on a deadly journey through the galaxy in this adrenaline-pumping new series. Asher is a young man whose world is turned upside down when he discovers that his fiancée's death has been directly caused by an imminent alien invasion. In a desire to better understand humans in order to destroy them, these aliens are projecting their consciousness into unsuspecting men and women, and in the process are learning exactly how to use humanity's own selfishness and greed as weapons against them. Fueled by emotions that the aliens will never understand, Asher bands together with a group of friends. These four MIT co-eds are more than meets the eye and go to battle with those who are intent on destroying our planet. Asher takes the fight from Earth to an alien spaceship and then to the very planet of the enemy trying to destroy them. The Galactic Satori Chronicles can be found on Amazon, where Book 1 Earth is only 99 cents and Book 2 Kron is $2.99. Head on over to Amazon and search for Galactic Satori Chronicles, or head on over to Leigendarium.com and check out the show notes for this episode. In the show notes, we will include a link where you can find both Book 1 and Book 2 on Amazon. And now for the giveaway that I was telling you about. This week our guest is Jon Del Arroz, and he would like to give one person the chance to win an ebook copy of his novel, Star Realms: Rescue Run. What do you need to do in order to get registered for the giveaway? It's simple. Head on over to Leigendarium.com, Leigendarium.com, find the show notes for this episode, and let us know what was your favorite part of the episode. It's that simple. Now enjoy our interview with Jon Del Arroz. Welcome everybody to this week's episode of 30 Minute Author Interviews. This week our guest is Jon Del Arroz. Thank you for taking time out of your day and coming on 30 Minute Author Interviews. We appreciate it.
Thanks, Preston. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah. Well, we like to start each episode out with a segment that we call Two Truths and a Lie, where I try to guess what the lie is from your two truths and a lie. I'm on kind of a losing streak, so we're going to try to turn it around today. So if you could, can you tell us two truths and a lie about yourself?
All right. Let me think about this. I once worked as a technician for a wind energy company. In high school, I played on the basketball team as a 5'9" nerd. And let's see. What was the other one? I had a good one earlier. I'm a big fan of Stephenie Meyer, author of Twilight.
Okay. So we have playing basketball as a nerd in high school, a fan of Stephenie Meyer, and what was the first one again?
Working for as a technician for a wind energy company. Yes.
Oh man, I don't think my winning streak's gonna start today. Just because it's so obvious, for some reason, I'm going to say, no, I'm going to switch. I'm going to say the basketball one is the lie.
Well, it's not a lie in that I sat on the bench for the most part, but I was actually on the team.
there we go. That's funny. So what was the lie? Was it the Stephenie Meyer? Because that's what I was originally going to go with.
No, I love Stephenie Meyer. I think she's great, and I'm happy to get into that later.
Okay.
But the wind energy, it sounds so mundane and normal that's what I was trying to throw you off with.
There you go. Well, my losing streak has continued. That's funny. So Stephenie Meyer, you're a big Stephenie Meyer fan. So I've only read Twilight. I have all her. Well, I don't have her newest one. Her newest one is I forget what it's called. Yeah, The Chemist.
Yes, which is her best book.
Is it really? I've heard
from what I've read, definitely.
I've heard some good stuff on it. So,
she's definitely progressed as a writer, and this is where I lose fans because I should have never opened a podcast by talking about Stephenie Meyer and Twilight and how I like her stuff. But mainly, I'm kind of just anti-bullying, I think it is. And so when I see somebody taking a lot of flack, no matter what the community it is, and it's in the science fiction fantasy nerd community, I guess, she became something to pick on the last 5-6 years. And it started to bother me. And I actually saw that she would be making posts on her blog and whatnot, kind of, I'm sorry I wrote Twilight like this. I just wrote down my dream that I actually had, and I didn't expect it to blow up like this, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It's like, why are you apologizing for writing something down and making a bunch of money off of it?
Right, exactly.
And I thought, that means the people kind of just talking crap about her really got to her, and I kind of decided at that point I'm going to read her and see what this is all about. And what I found is that, one, it's not nearly as bad as everybody says it is. It is a teen romance book, and it's marketed as a teen romance book, and it reads like a teen romance book. So what's wrong with that?
Right, exactly.
And from that point forward, I read her other writing, like The Host and The Chemist, and she actually, has progressed as a writer, gotten better with each subsequent book/series. And I got to hand it to her for doing a good job and persevering.
Yeah. I never read The Host. How was The Host? It sounded like an interesting concept.
I've read some of those concepts a few times, actually. Anne McCaffrey actually wrote a book called Freedom's Landing. It's the Freedom series. And she had aliens descend on a world, and the aliens, kind of are enslaving humans in some sort of way. And there's a romance sort of angle going on also.
Okay.
They're very different books. But it follows more of a romance path, I think, than a sci-fi path. So if you're reading it as like I want some deep, gritty, hard sci-fi, you're not going to find that here.
Okay.
But it's a cool concept, and she does a really good job developing things, and her pacing is some of the best in the business. So I think it's a big step up from Twilight for sure.
Okay. Well, I guess we'll end the Stephenie Meyer podcast now, and we'll jump into your books.
Thanks. I strictly think my books are better than Twilight and all that.
There we go. That's right. Well, for my listeners that might not know who you are, can you kind of give them your little author bio on who you are?
Sure. My name is Jon Del Arroz. I originally sort of came to a sort of fame in writing through comics. I had a webcomic online called Flying Sparks, and it's about a hero and villain who were dating under their secret identities and didn't know it. So hijinks ensued from there. And it got pretty popular. I got about 3,000 to 4,000 readers a week on that. But I quickly found that art is expensive, and just having a lot of readers like that does not actually mean you have an income from it. So it became untenable from a cost perspective after I actually got pretty far with it. In terms of standard comics, it got to about 7-8 issues, somewhere in there.
Okay.
Before which is pretty good by a lot of content. Mm-hmm. And at that point, I just pulled the plug, and I was like, okay, I got to do something else. And so I turned to prose. Started writing there for about 3 years, and I had 3 books in the can by the time I got Star Realms Rescue Run done. And Star Realms, I worked on it. It's a game-related novel, and that came out last year and got pretty big. So I was pretty happy about that.
And so then you have your new one that's out there. Just came out the other week. It's called For Steam and Country. That just came out. Has your reception for that one been pretty good so far?
Yeah, I'm pretty excited. It actually has been received better than Star Realms, which I was a little nervous about because I was switching subgenres. I mean, you wouldn't think there's a huge difference maybe between space opera fans and steampunk fans, but most authors kind of try to carve their niche and stay, if you're sci-fi, you're staying in that sci-fi niche. If you're fantasy, you're staying in that fantasy niche. Mm-hmm. And this was the thing I had ready. And when Star Realms came out and was so successful, I wanted to get something out as quickly as possible so that readers had something to follow up on. And this was there. It's definitely my best work that I had. The reader reception is showing for that. So I'm very happy that it translated across the subgenres here.
And as you said, Star Realms is kind of a sci-fi military space opera, and then your new one for Steam and Country is a steampunk. Why the switch from space opera, sci-fi military to steampunk?
Well, as I sort of mentioned, I kind of had this done, and I didn't really have anything else in the back catalog that I could get out very quickly. But when I originally wrote it, I guess I wrote it right after writing a space opera, which I'm still revising right now. And the steampunk, I don't know. I was really into steampunk at the time. I'd gone to Dragon Con in 2011, 2012, and I saw just the most beautiful costumes and the coolest looking people. And from there, I sort of just had that in the back of my mind for a couple of years. Of course, I bought my own steampunk costume since then, and I'd gone to conventions dressed like that a few times. So I wanted to do something because I felt like there wasn't a huge literary movement that followed up with it. I mean, there's a few books, but nothing that really people latch onto and go, that's definitive steampunk. And this is kind of how steampunk is going to go moving forward. And space opera, we have a lot of that. I mean, we've had decades of just epic works that people find seminal, and you can talk to anybody on the street and they know what they are, whether they're into space opera or not. So I was hoping that in creating like a fantasy world, I could move steampunk kind of into that next level of the public consciousness. Now, with books, it's not as easy to do that as with film these days. But we'll gain some steam as it goes along, right?
Right. Now, what do you think are the main differences, and then what do they have in common between your space opera as a genre and then steampunk? What are the similarities and what are the differences in the two genres?
I found them more similar than I actually thought at first. And I was actually talking to Robert Crucy about this. He's another independent author who's very successful. And I was saying, I was worried about the launch and saying, I don't know if I should be launching a different genre right now. And then I said, but they're kind of similar. It's like, instead of my spaceship, I have an airship. Instead of my ray guns, I've got guns. Instead of, medical, genetic advances and things like that, I've got alchemy stuff that's, people are using strange brews to heal wounds and things like that. So the technology kind of gets replaced from a sort of look at the future sort of way that computers change things to I found there's actually a term for this. It's called retrofuturism, where steam technology and clockwork and alchemy kind of paved the way forward in a way that didn't actually happen.
Now, a lot of steampunk almost seems to be almost historical fiction in a way. It's kind of set, it seems, in a past that we might know a little bit about. Is your steampunk set in any kind of almost like a historical fiction?
No, I made a complete fantasy world, and that's part of what drove me to actually write the book. Is that, as you said, most steampunk out there is a alternate history sort of setup. I mean, you've got Harry Turtledove, who writes some alternate Civil War stuff, and you've got Gail Carriger, who does Victorian kind of with werewolves and vampires thrown in there. You've got Sherry Priest, who's hers is set in, I think, 1890 Seattle. So most of the stuff that you think of as steampunk is just set in our world, and I think it's harder for people to latch on to something that's an alt history sort of setup as something iconic than a pure imaginative different world. I think there's something in the sci-fi fantasy mindset where people crave that when they want to define something. And so definitely wanted to go in a different direction with that than from what I'd seen of most steampunk out there.
Now, by creating your own world to put your steampunk novel in, did you run into any kind of more challenges than if you would have just done a historical kind of setting?
I think so, because if you can study some history and read a couple books, and you are in a spot where you really know intimately the details of things, especially something set about 100, 150 years ago. I mean, we have so much information on the Civil War, post-Civil War, and things like that, or Victorian England, for example. Whereas I kind of have to use a lot of the tropes, I guess, of those time periods for my world, but I have to, because it's fantasy, I have to do something different and twist things to make it a little more unique. So I've got monarchies still continuing, but I twisted it so that instead of like the way our democracies sort of started like really flourishing in the world around that time, that I've just got a king who respects personal property rights. And so that's kind of how the world looks a little different than most fantasy and alternate history. Okay.
I want to ask you about, I guess, challenges, but coming from a different way now. Going from your space opera to steampunk, did you come across any challenges that took you a little bit to get over, or was it, since they were almost similar, was it kind of an easy flow?
I think it was an easy flow. My real challenge in what I did in changing the way I wrote was that everything I've written except for this novel was in third person, and I wanted to try first person also. So it was a kind of a writing experiment. And I actually was kind of just joking around with somebody. I think I was at a bar or something like that, saying, well, shoot, I could do a girl perspective and let's just do it first person. And somebody laughed, and I said, I'm going to do it. So I sort of challenged myself to do it, and it was really hard, and I really worked hard to not come off as a male writing a female perspective. So that was the main challenge for me in writing it, and I hopefully succeeded there. So far I've had good feedback on that.
Before we continue, I guess, talking about it, can you give my listeners that don't know what For Steam and Country is about, can you give them kind of the book blurb on what For Steam and Country is about?
Yeah, so For Steam and Country is about a girl who is the daughter of a great airship adventurer, and she finds out that her father's dead and that she is inheriting his airship. So what happens from that point is she realizes that an airship's not just a fun little toy, but it's actually a very potent weapon of war, and that her homeland of Rislandia will be relying on her to sort of field this airship in battle. So she's faced with choices of having to go in and learn war, really, and fight for her country, or just kind of shirk her duties. And so that's a difficult choice for a 16-year-old to have, and it provides a lot of fun from there.
One of the fan questions I got was from Nick Cole, and he wants to know, why do people love steampunk? Is it because things are so bleak now and people view it as a brighter, more hopeful time?
That's interesting. And I think what I see and the problem I've found in a lot of steampunk fiction is that it's really bleak stuff. So, I mean, you just got kind of a dingy sort of quality to it in a lot of the fiction, a almost angry horror apocalyptic sort of quality. And I think looking at the costumes and looking at the cosplay of all the people in the cool Victorian get-ups that are very ornate and interesting looking and almost swashbuckling in nature, that's what I wanted. I wanted a feel of steampunk that had a hopeful, fun fantasy feel to it that led people to want adventure and fun.
And then one of our other, the final fan question I got was from Timothy Ward, and he says, he wants to know how Final Fantasy III inspired writing For Steam and Country.
Yeah, so I've hyped Final Fantasy III, which when he talks about that, he means Final Fantasy VI in terms of the way they've kind of renumbered things.
Okay.
But as we were kids, it was Final Fantasy III on the Super Nintendo. And really what drew me to this whole concept is I wanted an airship. And because that game, you got to fly around on an airship, you got to fight these cool little mech soldiers. There was a lot of steampunk elements to Final Fantasy III that I think people don't realize at this point, because they think of Final Fantasy, at least the early ones, as pure sword and sorcery, which the first couple were. But this one really opened up a cool world. And so I layered tons of Final Fantasy III references into it and Final Fantasy references in general. Because of that, you'll see that. If you're a Final Fantasy fan, you'll see tons of references just layered throughout this book.
Do you have a favorite Final Fantasy reference that you can, I guess, have the viewers look out for?
Sure. Every Final Fantasy has crystals in it, and you'll find a crystal pretty prominently mentioned in the book. And every Final Fantasy also has a Cid, a character named Cid. So I threw a character named Cid into the book. So those two things are make it pretty obvious what I was doing at that point.
Now, is your main character, was she your favorite character to write in this series, or was there another character that you might have enjoyed writing a little bit more?
I think the character that stood out for me the most was Talion. She's kind of the character's guardian along the way, who kind of brings her into the fold, and she just she comes across as just pretty badass, and I have a lot of fun with her as the book goes on. So I think the character, I don't know, I don't want to spoil too much, but I'll go with her for now.
Okay. Do you have an excerpt from the book that you can read for the listeners, so that way they can kind of hear what it sounds like? Yeah,
absolutely. So this is a point in the book where Zara, who is the main character, has been captured by some soldiers, and the airship under the command of Talion, who I just mentioned before, is swinging into action to assist Sarah here. So I'll read it in my first-person female perspective. I will not do voices for you. All right. The shot rang out, but the soldier didn't appear pleased with the result. I looked up. What I saw was the most beautiful sight I could have imagined, the Liliana. These sounds came from the turbines. 6 people in dark clothes descended from the side of the ship's hull, rappelling down long ropes. They hollered like maniacs, brandishing guns and swords. Our guard stumbled backwards, mouth agape. He shook where he stood, staring at me. His Wyranth uniform had several holes in it. Before he could do or say anything else, he fell to the ground. Blood pooled around his body. I dragged my feet and backed away. Bile rose in my throat faster than I could suppress. I'd never seen a dead man before, let alone one killed so brutally. 6 commandos from the airship dropped to the ground. They spread out, 5 of them circling around me and James. One I recognized as Marina, but the 6th member of the party surprised me, Captain von Cravat. She glowered at me, but her attention shifted when more shots rang out. One of the Liliana's commandos collapsed. The 3 Wyranth soldiers who had left stood with their guns trained on us, using a nearby tree as cover. My rescuers returned fire. Several shots hitting one of the Wyranth soldiers in the shoulder. He fell. The other 2 Wyranth soldiers wasted no time. Major Anton moved the quickest, charging the circle of my rescuers. His companion fired his gun behind him to cover him, keeping Major Anton from getting shot. Before I could think to yelp, Major Anton had a knife to my throat. "Weapons down or I'll kill her," Major Anton shouted from beside me. The 5 remaining rescuers looked at me. Captain von Kravat's eyes flickered as if she were assessing the situation for action. Her dark hair was tied behind her head, remaining still as her head moved. She took a step toward me. "I'm serious," Major Anton said. His hand shook despite his threats. The knife grazed my throat. "Weapons down, hands up. I'll spare the girl if you comply." "Wyranth soldiers, you think you're so smart, so brave. Really, your tactics are anything but. Taking a mere girl hostage? Is that what your empire has come to?" Captain von Kravat asked, scorn in her voice. Pathetic. Captain von Kravat leveled the gun right at my eye level. It pointed right at me. Could she be so cold as to shoot me to alleviate the situation? It couldn't be possible. Her fingers pressed on the trigger. I closed my eyes tight, tensing every muscle in my body. The shot rang out, a deafening noise, even with the whirring of the airship above. And I'll stop there because you'll never know if she dies or not, even though she's the first person perspective.
There we go. Now, I read in an interview you did that you were almost aiming for a YA audience when you wrote this. So would you classify this novel as YA or would you classify it as adult?
I think the lines really blur between YA and adult at this point. It's kind of hard just to separate the two. I mean, I've read a lot of YA, and it seems like there's not much of a difference besides just like the teenagers are kind of the main characters and that they kind of act teenage, and I guess maybe you get a little less detail on some of the technology and things like that. So on that level, yes, I think I wrote a YA book here. But it's a tweener. I would say it's like half YA, half adult. And I think anybody of any age could read it and enjoy it.
Okay. Did you have to do much research into steampunk before you started writing?
I didn't. I came at it pretty fresh. I knew I wanted airships. I knew I wanted that to be kind of the main primary focus. And so I kind of just figured out what sort of level of technology of the world I wanted. I wanted guns. I wanted swords to still be kind of a part of it. But kind of, I would say guns are kind of the main thing that people use as weapons. We have cannons, we have artillery from the ground that uses sort of clockwork steam technology to fire upward at the airships. So that's that all kind of just came from my mind rather than trying to pin down somebody else's thoughts on the genre. Okay.
And so For Steam and Country says it's book 1 of the Adventures of Baron von Monocle.
Yeah.
Have you started book 2? Do you have a time frame for when you're looking at releasing book 2?
Right now, I'm talking to the publisher about it a little bit. I've got the core storyline kind of mapped out, and we're gonna tweak it kind of just based on our chats here in the next couple days. But I haven't written it yet. It's at that point. I'm hoping to write it before the year's end, and then maybe March of next year as a target. I don't hold me to that, but that's what I'll plan.
Okay. And how many books do you see this series going?
I've got it planned for a trilogy right now, but we'll see how that goes once I get to the third book.
Okay, that works. And I kind of wanted you to be able to talk about your first book as well, Star Realms, while you're on here. Do you want to kind of give the listeners the blurb on what that is about?
Sure. Star Realms is about the card game. There's four factions in the card game, and I focused on the 2 human factions. So those are the Star Empire and the Trade Federation. And in my point in the Star Realms universe, those 2 are at war, and the colonies are really trying to break away from an oppressive sort of mega corporate governance of the Trade Federation. So they're in the middle of conflict, and their chief strategist gets kidnapped by the Trade Federation, and our protagonist is contracted by her empire to go break into a mega corporation and rescue this general. Along the way, she meets up with the other lead character in it, whose name is Dario, and he is an employee of the mega corporation, and he's kind of seeing the bad things that are going on, and sort of wants to help the little people that are in his area. And so as they converge, it becomes like an Ocean's 11 meets Star Wars kind of hijinks.
Okay. No, I have never heard of the game Star Realms. Do I need do myself or anybody who hasn't heard or played Star Realms, do they need to know anything about Star Realms going into your novel?
No, it's a very simple game. So you've just got ship names and base names, and that's all there is in the card game itself. So I recommend it because it's pretty fun, and it's actually for free on a iPhone or Android. But I wrote it so it's just completely standalone, and that this will stand as its own as a space opera. If you know the cards, I dropped several card names over the course of it, so you can kind of point to them and have some Easter eggs. But that's all you'll be missing out on.
Okay, so it seems like you're inspired by a lot of games. So are you a big gamer?
I didn't think of it in terms of that, but yes, absolutely. I'm I was big into video games. I've dialed that back in recent years, and I've been playing a ton of board and card games. Mm-hmm. I forgot to mention in my bio to begin with that I came from writing flavor for a card game called Doomtown Reloaded, which is from the Deadlands RPG universe, and I would write short fictions for them about once a month for about 2 years. And that's kind of what I did in between comics and the novels here. Okay. I've also written for a couple different RPGs. So,
what is your current favorite, I guess, board game obsession that you're playing right now?
I mean, I don't think I'm allowed to say anything but Star Realms. I mean,
there we go.
But I it sounds kind of stupid, but because it's such a fast game, I play it almost every day. Okay. So that's an easy one to go to. I really love this game Above and Below. It's by a guy named Ryan Lockett, and he's an artist as well as the game designer. So he does all the art himself, produces it all himself, and it's like a little worker placement game where you actually have a choose your own adventure element where people read stories and you kind of do things based on the stories. And obviously, I like stories, so that was a really cool element to that game, Above and Below.
Okay. Now, if you could write in any game world that's out there, what game world would you want to write a story in?
Wow. That's a great question. And I probably, let's see, I would probably say Deadlands. It's got several books already. Jonathan Mayberry did one last year, which was pretty good. And Tor actually bought the license for that, so they're going full-fledged with that. So if there's anybody from Tor who ever would consider giving me a job at this point, who wants to contact me about that, I'm a Deadlands expert for sure.
There we go. Just shoot him an email. He'll write a story. Well, here at the Leigendarium and 30-minute author interviews, we are known for one question, and that question is, a penguin walks through the door right now wearing a sombrero. What does he say, and why is he here?
He says, "Come with me if you want to live." And it turns out that in Antarctica there is a secret rocket launching facility which will save humankind from an alien invasion, which the penguins are aware about because they are attuned to alien technology. Now, they wear sombreros because they actually line that with foil to stop the aliens from mind controlling them.
There we go. So I've learned that's good. I like that.
And I totally did not prepare for that, by the way. I just made that up right now.
Oh, really? That is awesome. That is probably the funniest. So I've had two people, you and one other person, tell me why the penguin is wearing a sombrero, and that one is pretty funny. The other one was he's wearing a sombrero because he's sunburnt. So,
oh, nice.
Yours was pretty good. I like that one. Lined with tinfoil. That's pretty good. That's great. What can your readers expect from you for the rest of 2017?
I am about 60%, 65% through a space opera of my own volition, which I'm trying to get done here before the end of July. So we'll see when I can get that released. I wrote a second space opera which overlaps with the one I'm revising right now. So they're in the same world. They're kind of the same series, different characters. But they'll flesh out the world a little better for you, so you can kind of get a really nice overview of what's going on there. Because there's kind of a big war going on in that series, and I like to show different perspectives.
Very nice.
So those two are gonna hit, and I think as those develop, that's going to be what I'm known for. I have a gut feeling. As soon as those are ready, we'll see when that happens. I'm writing a completely different space opera, which is I call it the Nano Templars. And it's really about space crusaders, and they use nanotechnology for their shields and weapons and things like that, which is pretty fun. That I should hopefully have finished at least first draft by kind of the end of July, August also. Once I'm done with all three of those, I'm going to revise this one first, finish this next one, revise the next one, and then I'm going to work on for Steam and Country 2, or Baron von Monocle 2, rather, and then revise that. So that will be, I can't imagine I'll be able to write more than that this year, but that's what I'm going to try to get out this year.
So is that going to be 4 full-fledged novels then that you're working on this year?
Yes.
Wow, that's pretty impressive. Wow.
It's I don't know if I'm going to be able to do it. I think I might be a little aggressive in what I have time-wise, but I'm going to try. So Nick Cole, who you mentioned before, he's pretty adamant that authors these days should have a release a month, and I'm kind of on board with that. Mm-hmm. I think the answer to getting that kind of productivity is shortening your work, which I've not done yet. These are pretty long. So we'll see how that goes.
Well, good luck with all of that. That sounds like you got your hands full and your plate full. It sounds like for at least the next 7-8 months, probably. So, good luck with all of that.
Then I have to do sequels to all these, I'm sure, because if I don't start doing sequels and I keep doing all these new book one concepts, people are going to get mad at me.
So I guess one more question I have off of all that list that you just mentioned for that space opera series you said you're going to be known for. Do you have any idea of how many books you're looking at maybe doing in that world?
That one I'm kind of looking to do in perpetuity. I don't know that I'll use the same characters all the time, but I really like space opera stories that go around different characters. I like Sharon Lee's Leighden universe, for example, where she's got a bunch of different generational characters and they tell stories with different characters all the time, yet the whole world kind of progresses and it really makes something neat. And I think you get that a little bit with like TV shows like Babylon 5. Like you've got the storyline of like the Minbari in that, and it's really cool, and the Narn in that, and it's really cool, and the Centauri, and it's really cool. And you can watch a story about any of them, be excited about it, and you know that it's all kind of leading towards a point. And that's what I'd like to capture in novels.
Okay. Mm-hmm. And then where can our listeners go if they would like to learn more about you or the books that you've written?
Sure. All my books are on Amazon. You can look up for Steam and Country or Star Realms Rescue Run fairly easily, and you could probably spell that easier than my name, Jon Del Arroz. But I've also got a blog, which is delarroz.com, so you got to learn to spell it anyway. So it's DELARROZ.com.
Well, we will put links for all of those over in the show notes at Leigendarium.com. Can your comic be found over on your blog as well?
It's still technically up, but you can only see one page of it. It got hacked a couple years back, and I've never figured out how to fix it. So if there's any web gurus out there who want to help out and just get it running again, I'd happily show it to people.
Sounds good. Yeah. Well, thank you for taking time out of your day and coming on 30-minute author interviews. We appreciate it.
Sure thing.
Well, that is all the time that we have for this week's episode of 30-Minute Author Interviews. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we hope you tune in next Wednesday and every Wednesday for another great author interview. Don't forget to head on over to Leigendarium.com and find the show notes for this episode. In the show notes, you're going to find the giveaway where Jon Del Arroz has given one person the chance to win an ebook copy of Star Realms. And in the show notes, you're also going to find the link to our sponsor, the Galactic Satori Chronicles. Check them out and let them know that you heard about them right here on 30-Minute Author Interviews. And don't miss another episode. You can subscribe to the podcast on iTunes, Google Play, YouTube, and any other place that you listen to podcasts. Subscribe, rate, and review, and never miss another episode of 30-Minute Author Interviews. I would also like to thank a few of our Patreon supporters. I would like to thank Nick Breaker, Third Scribe, and Maggie Stewart Grant. They're supporting 30-Minute Author Interviews through Patreon. They're also receiving the Patreon-only podcast 10 Questions With. Visit patreon.com/Leigendarium and find out how you can support 30-Minute Author Interviews as well. And until next time, guys, remember to stay legendary.